7:03 and you're live.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. So we want to definitely take a moment to welcome everyone who is participating in tonight's forum. My name is Biama Charles. I am the chair for the Oneonta Police Department Community Advisory Board that is here this evening. Usually we meet bi-weekly every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And you can find all of our previous YouTube recorded meetings on YouTube. We will be leaving space for folks to comment this evening, giving each person 3 minutes. We ask that you state your name, your address, and then be brief as possible. I will lift my finger when you have 1 minute left, so that will be your indicator of how much time you have, and we will move from there. If you have additional comments that you would like to make that will push you past the 3 minute mark, we will ask that you send that to K Harrington, KHARRINGTON at oneonta.ny.us, and that will be going to Carrie Harrington, our city clerk. So we can admit the first person, Carrie, if that's an opportunity.
Sure, you have Catherine Bashaw coming in.
Thank you.
It would appear that Ms. Bashaw is not making the audio connection to participate in the call. Do you want to move on to the second petitioner and then we can come back to her?
Yeah, perfect.
So you'll have Ryan Sarasola entering.
Catherine or Ryan, did either of you want to make comments?
Ryan is connected and should be able to hear you and communicate. Catherine is still connecting.
Oh, is that me, Biama?
Yes,
me, Ryan?
yes, Ryan.
They said that. Yeah, no, I just got on, so I'm not sure what the question is.
Yes, so if you wanted to just state any additional comments, I know you're on the subcommittee with Bryce, but if you wanted to just state anything that you really wanted to drive home that you want to see as part of the recommendations, you would have 3 minutes to do so.
Okay, great. I'm not prepared to do that just right now.
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
With that said, ready to move on to number 3?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You'll have Jim Kevlin connecting.
Thank you. Hi, Jim. Can you hear us all right?
I think it's Crystal, is that you?
Jim, did you have any comments that you wanted to make in regarding the recommendations?
Whoever is logged on as Jim Kevlin, I don't know if that's Crystal or Jim, you are muted if you're looking to speak.
They've unmuted. I still don't have any audio coming from them, but it appears that Catherine's now connected to audio and should be able to hear you.
Okay.
Catherine, would you like to?
I believe Catherine is muted.
Yeah, I just am here to listen to the meeting for Rob Compton.
Okay.
Okay, I thought it was open to the public, is it not?
Yes, it is. If anyone had any additional suggestions or recommendations they wanted to put forward.
So
No,
sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just here to actually, because my boss is teaching a class and he wanted me to touch base on what happens,
Okay.
basically.
Perfect. No problem.
All right, thanks.
So Biama, it appears that all three people who have logged in have just logged on to listen, not to comment. I just had a email from the Jim Kevlin login as well. So it appears that we don't have anybody who's logged in to comment.
You have one more person in the waiting room still.
Okay, great.
We can let them in.
So you have Jamie connecting now.
This is Ryan again. I'm not trying to speak out of turn or anything, but Biama, my understanding is that you received recommendations from Kyle and I with reference to Committee 3. Great, good. Then everything there is what should be said by me at this point, and I'm in Catherine's boat, just here to listen to see what else we can include in that. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Jamie has dropped their connection. You have nobody in the waiting room at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. Biama, if I could, I just give a bit of a process update, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're approaching the point where the subcommittees should be finalizing their recommendations. We have 4 subcommittees, I believe. Bryce is here representing one of them. Shannon is representing a subcommittee. Aaliyah is representing a subcommittee. And who am I missing?
Luke.
Luke. Oh, Luke is hiding behind the L there. And Luke is representing a subcommittee. So as we're looking to no later than the end of February to have the recommendations come through from the subcommittees, at which point Luke is going to collect them. He will do any formatting that is needed on them. And at that point, they will be shared with Lieutenant Witzenberg of the police department, who at his discretion is free to share them with other members of the department if he wishes to review. And then we will have an opportunity to hear any input from the police department through the lieutenant on the recommendations. So we have an opportunity to make sure that we have their input and perspective on the recommendations before we move forward to finalizing them. Anybody questions on that? Concerns with it? Shannon?
Just curious, with it being under review by OPD, can OPD negate or say something is not feasible enough and that recommendation gets cut? How does that?
No. The board has the final, this report is the report of the review board. The review board absolutely has the final decision on what's included in the report. However, the board, it's only right that the board has an opportunity to hear OPD's perspective on any of the recommendations and all of the recommendations. There may be discussion back and forth. As a result of that discussion, the review board may continue to just keep it as it was written. The review board may choose to modify it based upon new things that they've learned through the discussion, or the review board may choose to delete it. But ultimately, this report belongs to the review board, and nobody will take away the review board's authority to author the final report.
Mayor and Biama, may I say something?
Please
Sure.
go ahead,
Go
Luke.
ahead, Luke.
First, I'd like to apologize. My internet's very unstable, so I have my camera off to try to save some bandwidth. In terms of collecting the reports, when you folks have finalized it before the end of the month, if you could send it to my email, I'd greatly appreciate it. That's where I'm kind of collecting them as a repository. And my email is on the email chain, but if you need it, it is lmurphy at oneonta.newyork.us.
Thank you, Luke.
Yama, you do have Deandra, who has entered the waiting room to comment.
Shannon, is she one of your subcommittee members? Okay. We can let
And
her
she's
in.
the brand new human rights commissioner for the city of Oneonta.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We can let her in, Carrie.
She's connecting now and audio shows is connected.
Deandra, hi. Did you have any comments that you wanted to make?
Hello, sorry.
Yes, no problem. Did you just want to tune in and kind of listen along, or did you want to share any thoughts from maybe one of the other subcommittee groups?
No, I came in to listen, but just, really proud of the work everyone's been doing and kind of throwing that input in there.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
You have someone
So-
else who's entered the waiting room for
good.
comment.
Good.
Yep, okay, we can let them in.
You'll have Kyle Burke connecting.
Kyle is on Bryce's and Rob's subcommittee.
He's connected and should be able to hear you.
Hi, Kyle, thanks for joining. Kyle, thanks for joining. Kyle, did you just want to listen in, or did you want to provide some additional feedback on maybe one of the other subcommittees?
VM, was that for me?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide feedback as well.
Have you knit?
I got a
Okay.
5-year-old running around as well, so it's
Okay. Shannon, can you mute if you're not muted? Thank you. Okay, Kyle, so you'll have 3 minutes basically to just, share some thoughts that you have or specific recommendations you really want to see kind of make it in the final. And then we will go from there.
just give me 1 second. You kind of caught me off guard here, VM. I just came in the meeting about 15 seconds ago.
Yes, you're good. You're fine.
I'm just pointing mine's here. Sorry, buddy. So our committee spent a lot of time with the documents that Chief Brenner gave to us. And there's several things that I believe the department can do to improve its relationship with the community and to foster a culture of accountability. One of the most obvious ones that comes to mind, and it might be the most simple to implement, is that there's no obvious and clear-cut process by which civilians could issue complaints against Oneonta Police Department officers. I tried to find a way to do that, and it's impossible to do so through the Oneonta Police website. And indeed, through a deep Google search, the only thing I found was an old PDF pamphlet from several years ago with the old mayor, the old chief's name on it, that had been scanned and then posted to some bizarre website, which said that you could go in person to file a complaint, and then and that was it. So there's no process that citizens are aware of through which they may be able to file a complaint about anything, from brutality to any other kind of concern that they may have. And that previous procedure that was laid out stipulated that people that wanted to issue a complaint would have to appear in person at the police station. And that may be something that we would want to address as well, for the obvious reasons that issuing a complaint against a police officer could be a difficult experience. Entering a police department, depending on the circumstances of what happened to you or a loved one, would be hard to do. Confronting perhaps the officer that you wish to make a complaint against would obviously be a way in which that process would not end up serving to ameliorate the situation, might in fact exacerbate it.
You ready for this one, Kyle?
Sure.
I agree with you. One of the things that I did is I just took a internal affairs investigations class. I will begin to address that at some point. We have some complaint form. I think there was a link at one point, but I think that's something that we can certainly make easier. So as a matter of fact, I was talking about this with the detective sergeant today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is all stuff that we're a work in progress. We always have been. But yeah, I agree with you. Maybe I thought at some point that we had a link with a PDF to fill out a complaint form online, a complaint and compliment form. But again, I haven't seen what the website looks like. I know that it needs updating. This is something that I've spoken with Carrie Harrington about a little bit also. So yeah, no, I agree. I think that we could definitely do better there.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody has any suggestions as to how we might make a form more available, Kerry, if that's something that we can put as a PDF on the website.
Yeah, PDF
come up with
or
a writable form, something that would be more easily transmitted. The other thing is we use a couple of messenger sites like Nixle that come actually directly to an investigator, the administrative sergeant, and myself at the police station, and that can be pushed through anonymously as well. So maybe that's something that we have to push out to people as an option for making a complaint as well.
Go ahead, Shannon.
So my subcommittee 4 did look at this. On the website, there is a compliment form, and then there's the complaint form that comes along with a two-sided brochure. Those are PDF files. They're very outdated. So I would hope that, like, for future, because we're okay, we have so much more advancement in what we can do. One of the things that we can add is the ability for people to submit complaints or compliments online. And actually, we do have somebody that's on another subcommittee that's willing to help create that page. He has web experience and tech experience and is able to go ahead and do that. If we were looking for somebody to do that, he said he'd be more than happy to look at doing that.
So I was looking at some complaint forms over the last few days, and one of the things that I want to avoid is making them overly complicated or technical that look like a police report type format. So yeah, again, I think that's something that's just going to have to be a work in progress.
The only thing I would ask, just because my committee did look and we looked at 15 other police departments of similar size, and they did not have the disclaimer about it being a misdemeanor if something is written incorrectly or stated incorrectly. The only thing I would ask is that we kind of remove that statement. As you know, and as well as other departments have gone ahead and made their compliment and complaint form the same form. So it cuts down on paperwork for everyone and confusion as well.
Sure, I think that's an easy fix.
Kyle, did you have another really pressing thought you wanted to share? Or
Well, one thing we had discussed and both Ryan Sarasola and I had written about is the possible use of early intervention systems to deal with use of force and also with officer conduct. And that was a question that was kind of put forward to us. It was one of the questions that came from the state, and we didn't really end up with a good answer to it based on the documents that we had. But utilizing those documents, the conclusion we came to was that early intervention systems weren't currently being used by Oneonta Police Department. So that was more of a question rather than a prompt for change. But maybe that's something that you might be able to answer for us, of whether or not that's something that would be considered, whether or not you've already thought of that, what the value might be of incorporating early intervention systems into the department's functioning.
No, that's something that I'm familiar with. Again, there's we were talking yesterday briefly about staffing, and I think one of the problems that we have here is that our administrative capacity is kind of flat. So, with all of these things, they require an administrative oversight and the ability for us to compile a fair amount of data, and it's an ongoing process. So, that's stuff that has to be reviewed as to how we would be able to fit it in and who would administer that. Would it be an administrative sergeant? Would it be the lieutenant's position? Would it be the investigative division? That's all stuff that's going to have to be reviewed to figure out how we can work that in. And the other thing is there's, different analytics for that kind of function. So, what would we adopt? Would we do this manually? Would this be something that we would invest in for software? So there's a lot of, there's room for improvement, but there's a lot of things that we have to look at as far as what we can afford and what's feasible.
May I mention something towards that effect? Or is this Kyle's time?
no, you're good, Ryan. He just hit his 3-minute mark. So
Great. Thank you. So Kyle, thanks for leading the way on all that. So yeah, one thing to your point, Lieutenant Witzenberg, the idea of staffing and the ability to make sort of meaningful changes. Seems like we have a subcommittee member somewhere around here who might be interested in helping out with website design. Has there, and you and I, Lieutenant Witzenberg, I've worked with getting interns over there at Oneonta Police Department. Is there any discussion of potentially leveraging college students or high school seniors to work on any of these issues beneficial to you, or in your estimation, would that be more work than it would be help?
everything needs to be supervised and guided to some degree. So again, this is going to be, as far as an administrative function, who are we going to task with making sure that this comes to completion? And how is it that we're going to see it there? And if we have people that are volunteering their time to do A, B, or C, how do we make sure that we stay on task? Do we have a timeline? These are things that kind of need to be worked out. And I'll be honest, at this point, given my staffing levels right now, I just want to see us keep moving forward towards getting to a more functional normalcy. And as we do that, because even just writing a policy can be very time consuming, right? Changing a policy can be very time consuming, having it proofread. Does it need to go to an attorney? These are things that take time and require administrative attention.
Might I ask, and this is just my ignorance of the process, so please forgive me, but in the recommendations that come from subcommittees and the ultimate recommendation by this board, this is going upstairs to the governor's office. Is there any room to recommend for administrative help for our police departments in this way, more funding in that regard, so that these issues could be worked through?
I'll be honest, I just don't know. That's something that I'll have to look into. And again, given the timeliness of the report and it being due in April and me coming into this kind of late in the game, I've got a lot of things going on right now, just trying to make sure that we're functioning on a day-to-day level.
Sure.
I'm running 2 desks right now, and it's been challenging. So
Yeah.
we'll see. And we've spoken about interns, and one of the things that I had done in 2018 was an evidence-based policing course, a 10-week course run through George Mason University, and a lot of the reforms and changes in police tactics and procedures were mentioned in a lot of the evidence-based manuals. And New York State DCJS has a research consortium. One of the things that they encourage us to do is work with people like you, with the local college, to try to get some research-based materials incorporated into our everyday operations. So I'm very aware of resources available to us as far as whether or not we can get grant assistance to fund projects like that on an administrative level. We're talking actual line item positions. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question I have, just logistics. So you're the point person as of right now with Chief Brenner's retirement?
That's correct. I'm the acting chief.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Witzenberg. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan. Did anyone else want to share any thoughts?
I'm not sure since I already passed on my time, if I could.
No, you're fine. Yeah, you
Okay.
still have 3 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Well, I did, so I think it's good.
Okay. My only comments is that I'm very aware of the staffing issues, but a lot of the times when recommendations are put out there, that's the response. And so it seems to me like staffing is forever an issue. So we can't keep tabling other issues until staffing becomes solved. OPD, from my understanding, is always down officers, and I get now that they're down more. But it seems like this is a necessary evil, losing time to ultimately create more time for officers to do their work and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if there are any opportunities where we can kind of tighten the belt a little bit harder, so we can make some of these things, even as simple as you were saying, there's not a lot of time for the complaint form to get updated, and there were really no set dates you had in mind. So coming around and thinking about oh, okay, if I give myself a week to get this done, and then we can see some actual things getting checked off our list. That's kind of what I was hoping to hear from some of your answers, but I don't know if that is possible?
Well, I mean, I think we probably could have been making some adjustments right along had we been more involved at the subcommittee level so that we could hear some of the things that were coming up. I think that, you know, those ideas could have been brought back at one point or another so that we could start pushing them into like the complaint form. I think is probably an easy fix. I can find a template for that and hand it back to someone to try to put into a PDF format and plug into the police department website. And I don't know how long that would take, but I can't imagine it would be terribly long.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was like listening to, thinking about, like, oh, so like by the end of this week, could it be done? Or even
I could,
today,
I-
or Tuesday, next week?
would you be interested in receiving like a PDF file of like a standard, you know, complaint form? I could send it to you in an email.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can use the subcommittees as like free laborers to get those kind of like nuisance things done, and we can get it done in a timely fashion.
Well, I'm not looking at any of this as a nuisance. I think that one of the things that,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't really mean nuisance. I meant easily achieved.
yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
I think that this is the type of thing where, you know, if I had somebody, you know, with a contact at the subcommittee level, that would bring suggestions to them where they may be able to come up with a creative solution right off the bat. You know, we probably could have been moving some of this stuff already. You know, because some of it is just a matter of wording. You know, I don't think that, you know, we're making an agreement that, yeah, okay, we need some more focus more on some diversity training. Again, this is an issue that for me to get somebody in to do even just a basic full day of training now, I have to backfill positions because I just don't have the staff. Now, this is not an issue that is new. You're right. However, I can't remember the last time that we were functioning at a nine member deficit. So while we do say that staffing is an issue, right now it's day-to-day operations aren't suffering, but a lot of other things are being put on the back burner, and I'm kicking the can down the road because I don't have the ability to put people in for certain things.
If I could just jump in for a minute, Deandra, you know, and Lieutenant, let's keep in mind that we haven't finalized the recommendations yet. And this whole report is still a work in progress and has not been finalized. There's going to be an opportunity for the lieutenant and others in the police department to have conversations about the recommendations to hopefully come to some agreement as to the implementation of them. So it may be premature to expect us to, you know, anybody to jump on the recommendations now before they've even been finalized and there's been the opportunity for a dialogue on them, which is what we're looking to see coming in the month of March before we finalize this.
Just really quickly. So the issue that I kind of viewed with the complaint and compliment form on the website was something that I did bring to Chief Brenner's attention quite a long time ago. It's outdated. It's not necessarily from this, you know, this past few years. I think it's older than that. It's just something, it's like just cleaning house. So like I said, we have somebody who is willing to take that PDF and somebody who is willing to go ahead and create that link so we can get that done, so we can kind of outsource this and get this done sooner. This is something that, you know, we've spoken about a few times. I don't think we're considering this like a recommendation thing, more like just cleaning things up a little bit.
Well, Shannon, I would state that we all know, when we knew before we started this, that that was an area where we were lacking, that the police department was lacking. I think what's important is that this process not only identifies that that's an area that's lacking, but that this process identifies the best solution for it. So there are many different ways which a complaint form can be developed. And I think that the input of this group and this board on some specific best practices on creating this form would be the important first step. That, we don't want to just create something to fill the hole that's lacking. We want to do it with the best possible thing we can. So I would look for this board to come up with some research for best practices and a very specific recommendation as to what they would see as the most effective way to communicate a complaint.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I appreciate it. I was just going off of what the lieutenant was suggesting, that he email a form that he has that's the PDF, that we could go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
That's the
no,
only reason I was re-suggesting that, was assuming that he already had a PDF he used.
yeah. No, I mean, I hear you, Shannon, and I think that doing it the best is more important than saving a week or a month and getting it done. I think, and that's why we need this board to research best practices, give us their recommendations, specific recommendations as to what is the most effective way to accomplish some of these things. So then once those are presented, they can be looked at by the department, and hopefully they are in agreement that that's something feasible and can jump right on it.
So subcommittee chairs, I would definitely suggest, as we move forward to the 22nd, which is the date that Luke and I would like the final recommendations from your subcommittee, to evaluate whether you have included specifics in terms of best practices, because again, that will likely speed up the process of implementation if and when those recommendations are approved. So it's one thing to say we need a compliment and complaint form. It's another thing to say 99% of police departments who've implemented it using this website have seen a tremendous increase in relationships with community members. So you see, so if we can, I would definitely encourage you all to look at your recommendations and try to be as specific as you can, keeping those best practices, or at least what others have seen bring them some success for their departments.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind that what we don't want to happen is that the board points out deficiencies, and then the corrections that are made after the board is no longer convened are not the ones that the board had in mind, or the board does not think that those are the proper or adequate corrections. So that's why what we need the board to do is not only point out a deficiency, but be as specific as you can in citing the correction for it, and based upon best practices that you may find in other communities.
Thank you, Deandra, for giving some comments.
Perhaps it would be worthwhile now, being that we're only a couple of weeks away from the finalization of the recommendations from the committees, to hear from each committee as to where you stand now, what you've done so far in the process, what still has to be done, and any concerns you have about having the resources and ability to provide as meaningful recommendations for change as possible.
Let's go in order just for clarity's sake. So Aaliyah, being that you technically have subcommittee 1, what functions should the police perform? If you can provide that first, that would be awesome.
Yes. So I'm just gonna state some some things that we have. I'm trying to pull up my notes section. So some recommendations that we've had. So I have a problem stating here that there is not enough transparency between the Oneonta community and the Oneonta Police Department, and a solution that we kind of came up with that. So it was looking through Ithaca's police department website. We found that they had a section that had a citizens complaint board, a weekly incident log, and a yearly extensive end report, and just the budgeting information available on there. So we thought that that'd be something that the Oneonta Police Department could kind of incorporate to, just having a weekly incident log so people could kind of be aware of what's going on within the community. I think the most important one is kind of the problem of the scope of officer influence extending far beyond their assigned responsibilities. So solution with that, and I was kind of hoping to meet with you, Lieutenant, sometime this week to get into the more details of this, is to kind of create a different emergency responder model in which when people call OPD, there'd be like a track of redirecting emergency calls to a mobile crisis assessment team, and we were able to reach out to them and kind of just go over that. So yeah, just redirecting calls, that kind of, I had some bit of concerns on how that would kind of take place, but I was hoping that through the meeting we would be able to kind of figure something out. I have having more harm reduction and crisis intervention training and de-escalation training. Let's see, for staffing and budgeting. I think a really important idea that we kind of got over that has to do with diversity in the department. And a solution that I have here is to have, since if this community advisory board extends after we submit this to the mayor, maybe this could kind of have like a section where we kind of go over any potential hires to the police department, just kind of like look into like, are these people diverse? Like, how can we get them to like come to Oneonta? So just having this community advisory board look into like reviewing these potential hires. I feel like that, I don't know, I thought that was like a good idea. But also just like seeing where more we can reach out to people. If we go to like reaching out to like different communities, just kind of seeing like the process of trying to reach out to people from diverse backgrounds. But yeah, those are just some things that we've gone over.
Thank you.
Oh, Biama, I just
Aaliyah,
want to share something with Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, are you comfortable? You have everything you need to be able to finalize by the 22nd?
There was something that like I have some doubts about. So at the beginning of when like with our first meeting, I think I was like very much focused on allocating funds, but seeing more into like the budgeting information, it's become like really difficult to kind of differentiate like where money could be allocated. So I'm still like in the works of that. But just like another recommendation that I forgot to like go over, which I think would be a good way to kind of tackle this budget, is that like money being spent into updating technology. So I was thinking if we could find a way to like reuse the same technologies from the year before, like whether it be iPads or like police cars, just using the same things from last year so that we don't have to like spend more money towards that. And maybe that way we could allocate money to like Oneonta High School or mobile crisis intervention.
Okay, thank you, Aaliyah.
Luke, your subcommittee.
Subcommittee 2, which
Two?
I think comes right after 1. So, yeah. So I would like to start by saying just how incredibly amazed I am with the amount of work that's been put in by members of my subcommittee. Literally hundreds of newspaper articles have been read, as well as I don't know how many hours of council meetings, as well as meetings of various committees that relate to the subject. In terms of how we're doing, I think we're doing quite well. We have currently an 18-page document. We are on page 15 of it, going through it, reviewing, making sure we have consensus within the subcommittee. And we are meeting we've been meeting once to twice a week to get it done. I'm really hoping that Thursday we'll have it done. That way I can streamline it and prepare. Just make sure it's in a format that I think is workable. I think it is right now. I just want to go through it again with one more fine-tooth comb and make sure it looks good, because I think it's a good format going forward with the other subcommittees, seeing as I'll be kind of putting them together and formatting them. And in terms of what we need, I might be mistaken, but nothing comes to mind. We are meeting the day after next. If something pops up, if there's any additional information, Lieutenant, I will reach out to you if that's all right.
Please, yeah, I would appreciate that. I think that having a conversation is important.
Certainly.
For anyone who is curious, the title of Subcommittee 2 is Employing Smart and Effective Policing Standards and Strategies. So thank you, Luke, for that update. Bryce / Kyle / Ryan, fostering community-oriented leadership, culture, and accountability. If one of you want to give a quick synopsis or ask any additional information you may need at this point.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in just with one of the challenges. I mean, working with Ryan, Kyle, and Catherine, they are amazing. I've learned a lot just as a community member, trying to understand the terminology and everything, through meetings and a lot of independent work messaging. So I would just say really just one of the challenges is now we're just trying to figure out how to put it together. I know Dr. Compton didn't expect to be teaching at night this semester, so just adjusting, with those updates is really, the big thing. I think at least on my end, been trying to just, look at some data issues, like things that we can improve with data within the police department, because it's there, but I know there's a lot of initiatives that can help us really do a lot more tracking, because it's really hard to really know what populations, what age and gender, based on interactions, if it's positive or negative. It's really hard to track that, and for a lot of reasons. But I know there's a lot of initiatives right now that I'm researching. Dr. Ryan and Dr. Kyle are researching, Catherine. So that's the main thing I'm looking at. Kyle and Ryan or Catherine, do you guys want to elaborate on anything else?
I would say in terms of the overall shape of our report, we're nearly there. We have a pretty good working document together. And there's more that we can do to polish it up. There's some questions that are kind of going to go unanswered based on what the state had asked us to provide, some of which kind of would have been useful to have like a survey of police department officers and staff about their own feelings about the department, how they feel about the values and the culture and so on, which are just simply things that we won't know and that the documents provided won't answer. And so that will be kind of a hole in the report at this stage. But to give you a sense of what we'll be suggesting or recommending coming down the pike, first, I've already mentioned creating a more accessible and more clear path for citizen complaint. A couple other things we are tasked with reporting on and therefore will be recommending will be potential avenues for civilian review of the department and of officer conduct or misconduct, utilizing models from elsewhere in the country, but really from elsewhere in the state. The city of Schenectady, for instance, has a civilian review board, and whether or not that would be a suitable model for a community like Oneonta. And then also vis-a-vis training and community relations between officers and others within Oneonta, perhaps roping in local agencies such as the Oneonta Human Rights Commission, the NAACP, social service agencies, conflict resolution agencies, as a way of sharing the efforts of the police department, but also of dealing with any kind of conflicting or strained relationships between officers and community members.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for what Bryce and Kyle were saying there, for sure, that we've culled through all the documentation. We will have some questions that I think need to be filtered up through our chair, Dr. Compton, and then they'll come to you, Lieutenant Witzenberg, soon, because, you know, this 22nd deadline is coming right up. Our next steps, you gotta have the solutions to some of those questions, but we've got some ideas here, and we've culled through, well, like it seems like other subcommittees have done, and Bryce mentioned best practices that are existing elsewhere. But one thing that I found really useful about this conversation was the idea of what can we implement when OPD is so short-staffed, and kind of what Kyle was just talking about, other community arrangements that might work out that we do so that everyone's helping the public safety, essentially. So yeah, so that's all I have to add to that.
And then beyond, I just wanted to add something. I know it's kind of off topic for Aaliyah. Aaliyah, I'll send it to you in an email, but I actually talked to a downtown business owner actually like 3 hours before the meeting, actually referencing she is actually friends with one of the programs in Ithaca. I'm just going to pull up the name because of course I forgot, but it's actually community outreach workers. So in downtown Ithaca, in relation, you know, it's kind of like not with the police department, but it's like related with the family services. They actually have those outreach workers like downtown, kind of just like walking around and, you know, assessing, you know, any potential needs, especially with like homeless populations or mental health. And I found it really interesting just from that conversation with the business owner right here in Oneonta, and just kind of hearing that perspective and just thinking about our officers' wellness too. A lot of times they get, you know, calls for certain situations. And I just think that's a lot for them to deal with from a traumatic standpoint. And if we can somehow, with the city of Oneonta, like Ryan said, be creative in using other services. And I know we have to understand what we have. So I know that's not an easy task, but that's something we can look into potentially. And so I was happy to hear that information. It helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You know, anything that we can have as far as community resources to help feed us information on what, you know, troubles we might be able to assist with, or just being out trying to help with services in the community is a big deal. That's a great idea.
I know it was something I just never would have thought of, and it was just interesting with Ithaca being a couple hours away. I know they're a bigger city, but it was definitely something.
The concept is there.
I think they've also, you know, they've got a couple of deputy chiefs there also. So again, you know, we go back to who's going to administer a lot of these programs, and it goes, you know, when you have a flat administrative staff, it becomes difficult to try to really forge ahead with meaningful changes when you're just dealing with day-to-day operations.
Right, and that's why it's great just to hear this, and like Ryan said, let's now look to see what we can do potentially with that at hand. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Subcommittee 3. Last but not least, Shannon, representing Subcommittee 4, recruiting and supporting excellent personnel.
Hi, so I just want to give a huge shout out to all of you for all the work you're doing, but also my subcommittee who's meeting twice a week, sometimes more right now. We're really working hard to make sure that we're being extremely thoughtful with our recommendations. Some of what we have been working on is similar to Aaliyah's subcommittee, and that we're looking to reappropriate some of the services that are out there. Again, we're waiting on our survey response, which I will get back to towards the end. However, in talking with Chief Brenner in the past and reviewing some of the data, especially the 2019 year-end report from OPD, there were some things that stuck out. So as Aaliyah was saying, MCAT, for example, is a 24/7 free service to this community. The amount of calls that OPD is receiving is 161 for mental health concerns throughout the year. That averages about 13 to 14 calls per month, which MCAT is able to handle those extra calls. So we do have ways about we'd like to see that happen. Again, we're still formulating these ideas. Another one is working with UPD to help relieve some of the calls that we get from the college students locally. We have some ideas on how to implement that as well. And another one is also working with LEAF so that we can, upon contact, there's 99 people that OPD came in contact with in 2019 for either drug or alcohol concerns. So in teaming with LEAF, we might be able to, again, at least relieve some of the reoccurrences of OPD needing to work with someone or address someone or their concerns or issues. If we have LEAF or something similar come in who helps hold them accountable, kind of pulls them out of that cycle. So kind of, again, taking some of this burden that's being put on OPD that can go to organizations in the community that are literally there to do these things and are already established, set up, ready to go. We feel like this would be a beneficial practice to us as a city, like to push forward. Something else that we're also going to go ahead and push for is going to be a continuation of this board, but a little shifted. So this board would be handling like assisting officers with community service or outreach or helping find trainings. Those are just some of the things that this board would take part in, but they also, as a board, will be there to help relieve some of the burden that OPD currently experiences. One of the things that we have heard from both sides, people who have had issues and concerns and people with praises and nothing but positive experiences, both sides are basically saying that OPD is overworked, there's a lot on their shoulders, they're going above and beyond. So we were being really thoughtful in how we can take some of that off of their shoulders so they're not having to continuously go above and beyond. So those are just some ideas of what we're working on. We do have more. The survey, as I said, that I would get back to, we are waiting for that magical number for it to be statistically viable. We need about 75 more responses for it to be about 95% viable with about a 5% plus or minus variation. So it'll be hopefully I'm hoping by next week. But with that, we'll be able to take data and we'll be able to share that data with you all and also with the greater community. It's going to be probably a little bit of an eye opener, and it will back up some of the suggestions that the other committees are making with things such as people not feeling like OPD is keeping them up to date on things that are going on, or the media, or know how to file complaints, things like that. So as soon as we get to that number to make it viable, I will get that data out to everyone. But yeah, so that's kind of
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Are you all looking for anything still, or you feel like you all are good?
we're rocking. We're meeting 3 and 4 hours at a clip. It's all about just making sure that we recheck all of our data, make sure we're checking things twice, so we're not trying, to establish anything that hasn't been tried elsewhere. We're also being incredibly thoughtful and mindful of officers' mental health and well-being. So I am waiting to hear back from other police departments in other areas on tactics that they've used to assist an officer mental health. Unfortunately, some of the greater organizations that were available have shut down the lack of funding. So it's been on those specific departments to come up with those things. So it's waiting to hear back from a couple of people, but really we're just waiting for that data from the survey to come in so that we can back up everything that we're suggesting, as well as some of the other groups. We'll find that the data is going to back up their suggestions as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So in the interest of time, thank you all for joining tonight. I do want to turn it to the lieutenant and or Gary, if you have any closing thoughts.
I'll let the lieutenant go first.
I just want to say thanks for putting in all of the effort that you have. I think that reform in law enforcement's an ongoing thing. This is something that we're not unused to. We've been changing tactics and procedures for decades and decades, and history shows that we're in a much better place now than we had been, 10 years ago even. A lot of that's due to technology, social media outreach. I think that's something that we could certainly do a bit better here. So I'm looking forward to hearing what some of the suggestions are so that we can start to, work on implementing some of those things. And I look forward to working with you guys and hope that, we can find some meaningful change in this.
Thank you. Mayor?
Well, I just want to say that, listening to the amount of work that each of your committees have put into this and hearing how often you're meeting, how many hours you're spending on this, I'm actually blown away by the amount of energy and passion that you're all bringing to this, with a real positive and innovative approach. So, as the lieutenant said, it's all about continuous improvement. There's never an end goal that you will get to. In addition to that, we live in a constantly changing world and a constantly changing society. So this will not be the end of change. I mean, it'll just be an ongoing process of continuous improvement. But I'm very optimistic that this final work of this board will result in an even better police department that serves all of the people of the city even better. And that's not to say we don't have an excellent police department right now, but for all of us, when you stop improving, that's when you die. So it's key that we continue to work towards constantly looking on how we can be even better. So I would just want to thank everybody for your participation in this. It's really appreciated, particularly when I hear how much time and effort and energy you're putting into this.
Absolutely. I echo everything the mayor said. For any group that may still be struggling in terms of format, template, if you're a visual person and you're still not seeing how it's all coming together, just shoot me an email and we can send you an example that Luke's subcommittee has come up with. We think it's a very clean, clear version and will likely be the way that we configure all the other groups, just so it has flow to it. So if that's not something you've seen already, just let me know.
Biama, please email that out.
Okay.
Yeah, like immediately. No questions asked. Yes, please. Thank you.
No problem. So yeah, will do. Thank you all again for your hard work. It does not go unnoticed, and it is definitely not unappreciated. We appreciate and thank you all. So have a great night. And yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Everyone.